who are joining us online are not, in fact, voting members. We are missing one member of our standing committee out on personal leave. Oh, no, we're not. Well, I'm sorry. We have reorganized. It's a new term. And so we have a new member of our standing committee. Dr. Silva is with us. We quote unquote traded. Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza is now over on CISL, and we have Dr. Silva with us, Kim Coelho, myself. Also in the room, we have Jean Sherburne, our Director of Finance and Operations, Bethany Spolansky, Director of Special Education and Pupil Personnel Services. We have School Committee Chair Ray Abel, who's managing all things Zoom for us. Thank you. And online, we have Julie Flowers from the City Council President. Thank you, Ms. Flowers. We have Christina Leal, and we have a member of the public. I apologize if I mispronounce your name, Jennifer Paguio. Okay, sorry. We are allowed to meet in a hybrid fashion thanks to the acts of 2023 from the governor, which have been extended. And even if we didn't have that going on, our city has voted to allow us to meet in a hybrid fashion if, in fact, the chair and a quorum is present. And we do have a chair and a quorum present this evening. And like I said, nobody online is going to be voting. So,
Ms. Misnick, we have Mr. Manzo.
Oh, and we, okay, so I did want to speak to that. So at the beginning of each term, when the school committee is voted in, our charter says that we self-organize. It's a little different than the city council. And so the city council, the person who gets the most votes, Madam President, Julie Flowers is named the city council chair, but within the school committee, we have no such rule, so we self-organize, and so our governing board this year within the school committee is the same as last term. But the other thing that happens at the term kind of boundary is that members of the public who have been serving have to re-up their term, and we do have term limits. So also in the room this evening, we have Mr. Manzo, a former school committee member, former school committee chair, former chair of this committee, in an incredibly valuable resource. But if I understand correctly, we have not yet sworn in our new members of the public. So, Mr. Manzo, this evening, as always, I will welcome you to participate with us. Officially speaking, you're not a voting member this evening. We'll work on getting that, and I apologize for that oversight. Our other member of the public who has served last term is in the same boat, a little different boat because she's actually stuck in traffic this evening. So our votes will be, Ms. Coelho, you and I, one of us will have to make a motion. The other person will have to, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry, Dr. Silva. Okay, all right, I've had a little too much caffeine today. So let's get started with our meeting. I'm sharing my screen, the agenda is up there. Our first order of business is to approve the meeting minutes from November 29th. So I'm going to bring those up on my screen. And Dr. Silva, I will just remind you that because you were not on the committee at that time and you were not in that meeting, I think that you should abstain from this particular vote. So, yes, Ms. Coelho.
So it says that I was absent for that meeting, but according to my calendar that I checked on my phone, I was here, so I am not sure.
All right, so can I just say we're going to table this and we'll look into that? Because I am thinking that I took the meeting minutes on the sheet like you have in front of you right now, and that you were in fact absent. Yeah. All of the votes have you as absent.
I wasn't sure according to this. I don't
Right.
know.
I don't. Oh, you know
Then
what?
I wouldn't be able to make a motion to approve those meeting minutes or vote if
Right,
I
and he
was
can't
here.
either.
I think you may still make a motion to approve, but you can also table them till next.
But I'm always going to be in this boat
Sure.
because he was not here either.
It's housekeeping. You can make a motion. Just, you can abstain.
Okay, but then you have.
Oh,
And then I'm not going to have a
vote, but
quorum,
we
right?
won't have 2/3 vote.
how does Robert's rules survive?
All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to table this for right now, and we'll have to figure out Robert's rules. We're moving on to the next item on our agenda. I'm not starting this meeting very well. I apologize. The next item on our agenda is gifts to schools. I will bring that up on our screen. Hold on one second. Miss Sherburne, do you want to speak to any of these? I'll make it a little bigger so everybody.
So we have two documents. The first one is the
Right, November.
November 2023, and we've received $2,231.84. This was various donations that came in. We did receive the Department of Education gave us a high-quality implementation grant that was to be earmarked for each elementary and middle school, $230 each. And then we also received money from the Framingham State. That was actually an overpayment that came in from on the professional development. And Ohio Prince is people that sell properties, shirts that say Beverly in stores has to give us some funding, and that goes into the district-wide. So I'd be looking for approval of $2,231.84 for November.
So moved.
Fantastic. Thank
Second.
you, Dr. Silva. Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Any questions for Ms. Sherburne on these, on this wonderful collection of donations? Seeing none, we don't have to do a roll call vote because we're all here in person. All those in favor? Okay, that passes 3-0. Our second item on the agenda is gifts to schools for December. I'll make that a little bigger on my screen. Ms. Sherburne, if you'd like to, do you want to say anything about these ones?
So for the month of December, we did receive some money from portrait commissions for the Hannah Elementary School and the North Beverly. $1,400 and $18.44. The Global Child that comes in and does foreign language to the elementary schools gives us a donation of $250. And then we received two Bev Ed grants. One is for the Beverly Teachers Professional Development Courses at Landmark for $7,000. And they received $2,000 for printers. I believe that is for the robotics. And the total is $12,494.
Most fantastic. I'm looking for a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Silva. Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Sherburne on this one? I have a question, and actually it's maybe related to the last one, which is that the refund that came in, right? Bev Ed had paid for something and they overpaid. So when we get money from Bev Ed and then we get a refund,
Yes, so
how do we make sure that it is then spent on whatever Bev Ed had originally earmarked it for?
Right, so it did go right back into the Bev Ed grants portion of the gifts to schools.
And so,
It would still be going there, so we balanced with that to Anna Green on the things, and so if we do actually have, I think what we did is we overspent the grant, and then we received the money back.
oh, okay. Okay, most fantastic. All right, so there's a
So if
motion on.
not, then if we had $225 left in that account, I would check with Anna Green to see if we can continue, or do we need to return the funds to them?
Got it. Okay. Motion on the table. All those in favor of accepting $12,494? That passes 3-0. All right. Next item on our agenda is grant acceptances. So hold on one second. Really would be a little easier if I wore my glasses. So on our screen, Ms. Sherburne, I believe this is the file you asked me to show.
Yes, so we have two new grants. Grant number 274, which is a special education grant through the IDEA targeted funds, and this is for a program improvement. It's for $41,531, and if you have any specific questions on what that would be utilized for, I believe it's for IEP implementation. Ms. Blansky's here that she could give us a little bit more, but this is what we call an entitlement grant, not a competitive grant. And the other grant we received was number 528, and that's for chronic absences grant. So Dr. Shrochek filled out a survey, and by filling out the survey, we got $10,000 to work on how we can reduce the chronic absences. And that one there was, I didn't put it down, but that is actually ESSER funded. The funds that came into the state, earmarked for the state for ESSER, they then passed on to the school districts.
Right, and I
So
will,
Ms. Flaherty, Dr. Flaherty and Dr. Schroeder would be the ones overseeing that grant.
I will say that at our last school committee meeting, at the CISL meeting, and then at the committee of the whole, Dr. Mackenzie DeFranza read out the fact that they talked about chronic absenteeism in CISL, and then I believe Dr. Trocek spoke to some of the techniques that are going to be used to try to tackle where this money will be
Okay.
used. So
I did miss
it's kind
that
of
meeting,
weird,
but
right? They
thank you.
talked about it in CISL, but we have to approve the money here.
Yes. So I'm
Right.
looking for a motion to accept $51,531 in grants.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Thank you, Dr. Silva. Any questions for Ms. Sherburne? Anything that we haven't already covered? Excuse me. All right, there's a motion on the table. All those in favor? That passes 3-0. Next item on the agenda is maybe taking another drink of Diet Coke for this lovely voice. Budget transfers. Putting that up on my screen. We have one budget transfer this evening. Transfer number
708?
708. It's circled on your screen. We're taking money out of other instructional costs and putting it into non-instructional attendance. Do I have that right?
Yes. What Dr. Schroeder asked that I put in funds in that University of Beverly is just a name of an old account that we need to change. But Dr. Morgan needed some funding for to run some meetings. So expenses that would be running for meetings under his category, and we did not have that. So we were moving that, and we took the funding from OT 660, the professional development. So he needed some funding for, I believe it was literature for a specific thing under his category.
Okay. Looking for a motion that we accept this transfer recommended by administration.
Motion.
Thank you, Dr. Silva.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Anybody have any additional questions for Ms. Sherburne on this one? I'll tell you can hold your question, and then maybe at committee of the whole, if you had some questions, I could, underneath the F&F report at the next meeting, I can read them out if anybody wants to do that. All right, so there's a motion on the table. All those in favor? 3-0. Fantastic. Thank you. Next item is a building and grounds update, and I'll put that up on the screen for half of a second. We do not usually, for Dr. Silva, we don't usually talk about this report in depth at this meeting. Rather, you get it in your packet, and if you have questions about it, you can email Jean ahead of time. You can also email Jean after the fact, right? And once a year, we have once or twice. Twice a year we
Sometimes
have,
twice, at the
sometimes
beginning and
twice
at
a
the
year
end.
we have Mr. B&G come in, Mr. Shiroli, and usually at the beginning of the year to kind of tell us how was opening the schools, and then at the end of the year, okay, here's all the things we need to do this summer, and so we kind of bookend our FNF meetings with B&G, and otherwise during the course of the meetings, because we stack our meetings now and we're restricted to we're mostly restricted to an hour, or restricted is a bad word. We try to fit our meeting in, and within an hour, we have so much work to do that we kind of say, all right, if anybody has any questions about this, we'll handle it offline. But our name is Finance and Facilities, and so this is the bulk of the facilities part of this meeting, and it's kind of left as homework to the committee members to do, quote unquote, ahead of time or offline.
So one thing I'd like to say is they are very excited about having this new work order management software that's part of the city. and that they've implemented at the beginning of the year. And what they're showing here is that we've had 438 since September, and that 365 have been closed, and there's some that are still working. So he did that. And yes, Dr. Silver, anytime you have any questions, you see that, if you want to ask ahead of time, we can get some information, or, we can get the information after.
What was used in the past?
Excuse me?
Microphone.
Before this?
You have a microphone on. Sorry.
What was used in the past?
We used School Dude, and then it pretty much was, a lot of times it was just conversation through the principal to the custodian to Buildings and Grounds. So this is a little bit more in-depth, and it can also track preventative maintenance.
Great.
So we're very excited about what we can do with this.
Does it have a cool name like School Dude, though? I don't see a name on
I
here.
don't think I know a name.
Maybe it can be
order.
School Dudette.
Yeah, no, it's not School Dude
better.
at all.
Mr. Mandel, I appreciate the fact that you kind of snickered at my bad joke. All right, we're moving on. The next item on the agenda is, our Director of Business and Operations, her update. Okay.
Okay, so the administration update is welcoming winter here. We're going to be we're going to have the food service update from Ms. Christina Leo, special education update from Bethany, and that's just not a whole update of the whole special education department, but we asked her about the out-of-district placements. I had on here with an asterisk of a coaching stipend request. However, we cannot vote on that because I did not remember to put it on the agenda. So I'm thinking that maybe we can discuss it, and then we'd have to bring it to another meeting. Policies, I'm just reminding us that we have policies that we have to update. And then my financial reports, revenues and expenses, and I've written out on my update here 3 areas that I think we need to be looking at in our expenditure report. So I'm going to turn it over to Christina Leal to talk about CEP.
Miss Leo,
Thank you very much.
when you want me to, when you want Vanna to switch to the next slide, please just say so.
All right, you can go right to the next slide immediately, and I'll start there. So recently, Beverly has been approved for CEP. CEP is part of the Healthy, Hungry, Free Kids Act, and it allows districts to serve free breakfast and lunch to all enrolled students with no cost, no applications needed. This is really big in other states where it's not free for everybody. But obviously, since COVID, Massachusetts has been free for everybody. But DESE has really put a push for districts that qualify for CEP to apply for it and get approved. Pre-COVID, the threshold was 40%. Districts needed to be with an identified student percentage. And after COVID, it got lowered over the summer down to 25%. So this summer it went to 25%, and Beverly is at a 33.31%. So we did have to apply for it. We got approved mid-January, and basically what it is, the benefit is going to be that more money is coming out of the federal government to reimburse the program than the state. So if you go to the next page, some of the benefits is obviously the free lunch and breakfast, less paperwork, so there is no more household applications for families to fill out at the beginning of the school year, which is a huge benefit for families as well as us in the food service office. Our participation will increase. This is really huge for states that are not free for everyone because there's no unpaid meal debt. If you remember those days pre-COVID, there is none of that for any states that do qualify for districts that qualify for CEP. CEP status is good for 4 years, so we do not need to apply again until 4 years from now. And like I said, we were approved in mid-January. So if you go to the next slide, I did a little breakdown. This is the claim that I submitted back in October. And so if you can see, the one to the left of the screen is non-CEP, which is what we were in October. Had we been CEP, this is the breakdown of the finances from the state money's coming from the state as opposed to federal government. So it would be a $19,000 difference. It's not huge, but it's still $19,000, which we would rather get from the federal government instead of the state. So that is CEP. And then I also wanted to talk about on the next slide, we have a new point of sale system, School Cafe. So you may have received my Connect Ed calls informing families that we are getting a new point of sale system. We've been with Mail Magic for at least 13 years, and we have not gone out for an RFP or anything for a new point of sale system. And our contract for Mail Magic came up at the end of February. So Steve and I did a lot of research. We've been having issues with the registers for the point of sales. So we did demos with different programs. We both felt School Cafe was a great fit. It's cheaper. I can use it as well for my menu software program. So we decided to do the switch. And we are actually going live on February 1st. So there's been, if you go to the next slide, communication out to families twice already, because it's going to affect the online payments for families that want to add funds to their students' accounts for snacks. We are accepting on our current family portal until this Friday, and then we're going to shut it off, and there's going to be about 5 days where families cannot add funds, just to make sure all the funds on students' accounts go over accurately to our new family hub. And communication will go out to all families next week with the new website of where to add funds to. But we are all excited. We've started training in all the schools, and it's getting well received from the cashiers and the food service workers so far. So we're excited.
So Christina, with the CEP, the students, if they want a second meal, that's what they would be using, happen to put funds on for?
Yes, so it's still only one breakfast and one lunch for all students. So if a student did want a second lunch, they would need the funds on their account.
And I will say, switching very quickly here to my policy hat, we are bringing forward for a first reading this evening the meal charge policy, as well as a brand new policy that relate to the new policy relates to CEP, and then our meal charge policy has to be updated to reflect the fact that we're now a CEP district, and parents, guardians, caregivers can have funds in an account to purchase those extra items. But the fact is the first meal is free.
Right.
So we're cross coordinating in between F&F and policy to and I talked with Ms. Leal about those policies before the policy committee took them up. Committee members, do we have questions? Yes, Dr. Silva, I saw you first, and Ms. Coelho will come to you.
I just have a question about, you said that there was a savings between the two systems. Can you comment on that?
On the point of sale system?
Yes.
Yes, so currently it's, if you combine both of my back of the house system, which is the menu software, and Meal Magic, which we currently use, it's about $16,000 a year. With switching over to School Cafe, it's at around $13,000.
Great. Thank you.
Fantastic. Yes, Ms. Coelho.
So if the kids still have some money left in their Meal Magic account, when the School Cafe gets switched over, how do the parents get those funds? Does it automatically switch over to their new account?
Yep, it automatically switches over. So on January 31st, we do an upload and take all the balances out of Mail Magic and transfer it into School Cafe. So if your child had $10 Wednesday, they'll have that $10 on Thursday. It's just a different system.
So it's just a different way of keeping track of it. The funds are actually in the City of Beverly's account.
Okay, I'm going to call on myself. Ms. Leal, I want to ask about the numbers, the 25% threshold versus you said Beverly's ISP. I went to the slide that I wanted to ask about. Our ISP is 33.3%. Does that correlate with if I were on the DESE site, my socioeconomically disadvantaged student percentages?
Yeah, so the ISB is strictly only students that are direct certified through the state or homeless or migrant students. It does not include any household applications. So it is strictly pulled from the state.
Okay. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Okay, any other questions? I'm looking around the room. Do we have any questions for Ms. Leal on this particular? President Flowers, I see you. I think you said no. I think you were nodding no, but I feel bad that we don't ever call. I didn't call on you yet this evening. So do you have any questions
okay.
about? You do have a child who
I
will
was
be.
shaking my head no, and partially because I think I came in with an unfair advantage because I have a student at the middle school right now, and so I received emails from Miss Leal alerting parents to this. So I sort of came prepared for some of this, or knowing that it was happening. So thank you.
Okay, fantastic. All right, Ms. Sherburne, where do you want to go next?
If you go to the next slide, after you go to Ms. Leal's, then that one there, and this is F and F, and for out-of-district update. So I had somebody that was actually proofreading, and they said, "Oh, Jean, you missed input. It should have said food." And I said, "No, we went from food, and now we're in OOD, which out of district." And this Ms. Plansky will be able to discuss the next slides.
Fantastic.
So I just want to preface that we asked Ms. Plansky to come. Ms. Visnick and myself asked her to come to talk about the out-of-district placements and what we kept hearing about the 14% OSD. And so she has some information for us, kind of to prepare us for when we start talking about budgeting and at our committee of the whole meetings.
And to be very explicit, I apologize, hold 1 second further, because normally we have been in the incredibly fortunate enough position that we've carried over all of our
Circuit
breaker money to apply for quote unquote this year, because it's a reimbursement kind of situation. So we have the last several years been in this fantastic position where we can carry over all of it to apply to next year's budget. However, this year we're not, as we plan for next year's budget, we're not going to be able to do that.
Right, so when we planned our budget for FY '24, we were figuring a 38%, using 38% of our current year circuit breaker on current year expenditures, which we're not sure if we're going to meet that, but we do know, as we get into our expenditure report, we have exhausted our funds, so we are starting to use circuit breaker.
Okay.
So that is why we wanted to have Ms. Splansky come, not give us a whole special ed update, but just this specific.
Specifically to this thing as we look forward to building next year's budget.
Yes.
All right, now that we've framed that hopefully sufficiently well, especially for our newest F&F member, Dr. Silva, the floor is yours, Ms. Splansky.
Okay, thank you very much. So I just want to start with a little bit of background information. We have very, very strong in-district programs. We've spent the last 6.5 years really focused on building our capacity to meet the needs of students within our district. And so this has reduced the number of placements in out-of-district placements. So the students who are in out-of-district placements, they're there because they require that level of support. We're unable to meet the level of need within our in-district programs. So I think that's important just to keep in mind that it's a very few number of students whose level of need just exceeds what we can do within the district. It's also important to keep in mind the fluid nature of placements. Everything is a snapshot in time. There's a lot of changing within placement. Students change from placement to placement. We have new placements that are required for a variety of reasons. We also have students move in the district, move out of the district, and so it's very, very fluid, which is why we meet on a monthly basis to review all of the changes that happen because they're so frequent. So everything I'm talking about is, anticipated, projected, but certainly changing over time. If you want to go to the next slide. Oh, you're on the next slide.
Can we?
Yes,
Can we take
sure, sure.
questions, or do you want to hold till
No,
the
no,
end?
I'm happy to take questions.
Can you just speak to the nature of why it's so fluid? And like, I would think that, I'm just curious
Yeah.
as to why it's so fluid.
It's fluid just because, again, the level of need of students who require this kind of placement, it can be very hard to meet. So even within out-of-district placements, there's a lot of changes that can happen because of changing student needs or other factors. But it's really, we're dealing with very complex needs that can be difficult to
So
meet.
it's not a matter of new children moving into it's a matter of students that are currently in the system that may shift into needing it or not needing it.
So it's students who are already in out-of-district placements who might change from one placement to another placement to another placement. So they're already in an out-of-district placement, but they might move from a public day placement to a private day placement, or from a private day placement to a residential placement. So there's that type of movement within individual students. Then we also have students who are currently in the district who move into out-of-district placements for a variety of reasons. And then we have students who move into Beverly who are already in out-of-district placements, who were placed by a previous district that then we pick up responsibility for. Or vice versa, students who move out of the district who now are no longer living in Beverly but are attending in an out-of-district placement. So all those factors come into play, which is why we have a lot of movement that happens on a daily and weekly basis.
And what we do, Dr. Silver, is we do meet with Bethany, myself, her bookkeeper, my bookkeeper, and the out-of-district placement coordinator meet every single month. And each month when we meet, we do change our purchase orders. So if she has a student that's in placement A and goes to placement B, and that's a reduction in cost, we go in and change the purchase order to less. If it's an increase, we do that. So one of the reasons why we do that is in my previous district, at the end of the fiscal year, they had a shortfall. And I'm sure you've heard about that in other communities, where Bethany and I, each month, our staff is working doubly hard because we're making them change every time. Okay, 3 days off, okay, reduce that, now add that. And it is making sure that we all know where the hot spots are. And she does have students each month that she has on the radar, that she's like not sure that's going to happen or what kind of placement they're going to go in. And then everything's derived from IEP meetings with the parents and the teachers and everything. So we're very comfortable. We've been doing this for all the time that Bethany's been the SPED director. We meet every time. And actually, our previous SPED director went to another community and she said, I went to my business manager and said, when do we meet? And they were like, well, we don't meet. And I was like, oh, no, we meet. And so, and we like it, and it's good. A lot of times they're talking student initials. I don't even know the names because that's not something I need to know.
Thank you.
Of course, yep. So this shows, again, snapshot in time about our current and anticipated placements. We've hovered right around 70 out-of-district students for the past several years, which is a significant decrease from where it used to be, which at one point was in the 120 range. So we've made huge progress in this area. I do anticipate that we'll have a slight increase starting next fall. Again, it's just a guess at this point because there's still decisions that need to be made. And again, the decisions that are made in this case are made by teams that come together to address student need. It's not made administratively, but it's made by student teams. So those processes need to play out so that we know what that number will look like. But I do anticipate a slight increase. Yep, perfect. And then in terms of tuition increases, the OSD, which is the governing body that sets the tuition prices for private and residential placements, has said that we should anticipate tuition increases of 4.69%, which are higher than, our historical averages, but much lower than last year's 14% increase, which was really unprecedented. So right around 5%. And then for our public day placements, which are placements through consortiums, our consortium is the North Shore Education Consortium, NEC. We're anticipating a 5% increase on their programs with one exception, and that is the Kevin O'Grady School. We're anticipating a 14% increase with that program. So just to give you an idea of what we're talking about in terms of tuition, most of the consortium programs are right around $47,000. So with that increase, we would be up about $2,000 to around almost $48,000. And then for KOG, this program is, meets the needs of students who have much more complex medical needs and other needs. Right now, they're at around $85,000, and we'd be looking at around $97,000 for next year. So that's a pretty significant increase.
All right, I want to go back to the previous slide.
Sure.
And so when we look at this chart and we see that we have, as of now, January 2024, 30 students in public placements, 34 in private, and 6 in residential. Is there any way for us to know, for instance, of the 34, or how many of each of these numbers fall into one of those categories of the price increases?
Sure. So the OSD, 4.69%, that is the line that it says private and the lines that says residential. That would apply to those two lines. The public is a little bit trickier because those bottom two lines, private and residential, those would be the 4.69% increase. The public line is trickier because it includes our consortium programs, but it also includes other consortium programs. So, I'm kind of ballparking the numbers, but out of those 30 students, maybe 20 are within our consortium programs, and maybe 10 are in other consortium programs like Valley or Crest or SEAM. And so it's a little bit, those all have their own price increases.
So of the 30,
Yep.
so 20 of those 30 are going to be in one of these that's on this page, like NEC or Kevin O'Grady or...
Yep.
So Bethany's going to be doing a whole big presentation when we get to budgeting. So
Okay.
what I said to her is, I asked her to give us the numbers, because I said, if you say to my committee 5%, 14%, what does that really mean? Each group has different variations of what the price are, so I didn't want her to get bogged down on that, because that's actually going to be for the FY25 budget thing, so she's already got it budgeted for this year. But yes, that's what I said to her, can you give us an example so that we'd have an idea?
Okay. And
You
Dr.
will be hearing all of that at the budget meetings.
All right, Dr. Silva.
You don't have to address this now, but I'm curious, in that presentation for the budgeting, I assume this is K through 12? Or is it
Pre-K through 22.
pre-K through 22? So seeing the numbers across that spectrum would also be useful, I think, just for planning purposes.
Okay, sure.
And then
Okay.
reconstruction, they might not know what that
Yes, so
means.
separate from the anticipated tuition increases that are set every year, there's also a process called reconstruction, where programs can basically apply to restructure their programming, and this can include, changes to the facilities or changes to staffing, but it's kind of like a major overhaul of their programming, and with that reconstruction process, they get authorized to do a tuition increase that exceeds the typical 4.69 or whatever that increase is for that year. As of right now, there are 2 programs that we have students who attend that are going through the reconstruction process. Walker School, which is going to go from $112,000 to $133,000 for next year, which again is quite a significant increase at around 18%. And then Walker Beacon, which is going to go from about $72,000 to about $90,000, which is a 25% increase. So those are just important. It's important to know that process does happen. Right now, these are the only 2 schools. Sometimes we've had many more than this, so this actually is not too concerning, but it's something to be aware of.
Dr. Silva.
Yeah, so this may be a foolish question, but I'll ask it anyway. Is there a limit to how many times they can go through Like, is reconstruction actual physical, or is it administrative reconstruction?
It could be either. Sometimes they're doing like, they need another building, they need another facility.
Yeah.
Other times they need to hire, additional clinical staff because of the level of, behavioral or emotional need of the students. And so they're adding, staff members. It can be either
So
one.
is there a limit to how many times a particular school can have this type of increase under the, umbrella of reconstruction? Is there a period where, they can't do that for another 2 or 3 or 4 years?
That is a great question. I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell you that in my experience, it's very infrequent that a school will go through reconstruction. I've never been aware of a school that's gone through it more than once within like a very long period of time. So it's an infrequent kind of process. Yeah.
Good.
Bethany, are those private or residential programs?
Those are private day.
Private day.
Correct. Okay, and then in addition to the tuition increases, other factors that might impact our projected costs, we have more students at this point in high-cost placements, and the reason for that primarily is that with sort of the outcome from COVID and more students who have a higher level of need, there are fewer placement options available than ever before. And so there are times where we might have a student whose needs could have been met in a lower cost placement like the consortium, but they simply don't have room to accommodate because they're full. And we, have to look at other options. So there's that factor. And then there's also a lot of times addition of a staff member, additional one-to-one staffing because programs require the additional staffing in order to meet the needs of the students. So those factors will increase the costs. And then we also, as I mentioned before, are anticipating a slight increase in the number of placements for next year as well. And then finally, one more anticipated cost for FY24 is our consortium is giving an assessment to all of their districts due to some capital expenses that they have. And the way that they are going to provide the assessment to districts is by distributing it amongst their tuition costs for individual students. And they're doing it this way so that it will be circuit breaker eligible for reimbursement. So for the last payment in June that we make for tuition payments for our students, they're going to tack on this money into those tuition payments, which then will be reimbursable for next year's circuit breaker.
And do we have to exceed some threshold, or will that whole 80,000 be eligible?
So that's a great question. The threshold is per student, and so when they tack on that amount per student, we're already at the threshold, so then it would just, all that then would be reimbursable. Yeah.
Any additional questions for Ms. Spolansky as we fly through to the last couple items on our agenda? Oh, look at that. Very nice.
So
Okay.
the next item that I have on is the athletic coaches. So I'm just going to briefly go over this quickly because I think it's going to have to be tabled to our next meeting because I didn't put it on as a voting item. But the athletic department, as you know, we have a new athletic director that I was hoping that would be able to come this evening, but he's over at Endicott at some hockey games. The athletic department is requesting 3 additional winter sport coaches, one for the assistant coach for the boys basketball, girls basketball, and then an assistant coach for the indoor track. The costs associated with this would be $7,036 for those 3 positions, and it would be funded by the athletic revolving account. I asked Mr. Wood, our new athletic director, his name is Ryan Wood. I asked him to give me a justification to the school committee on what they were looking for, and I've put it here that winter sports, he said that the winter sports that do not have a paid assistant coach, so they do have like volunteers that they've had, would be these, and he gave the boys and the girls basketball, and he gave us the enrollment this year. So I'm kind of gonna just leave it at that. I think if there's anybody on the committee that wants him to come forth with even more detailed information, if we can get that request to me sooner for him to come and have more. So I'm kind of tabling it because I didn't put in the necessary thing on the agenda to actually vote.
Right. So what I will say to the committee is that also, just like we have Ms. Splansky usually and the B&G come at some interval at our meetings, we usually have at least once a year the athletic director come in and give us an entire presentation on the levels of participation across the different sports, across the different seasons, how many children needed scholarships, and sometimes we've asked for the ratio of coaches to athletes. And so given this request, I already logged with Ms. Sherborne, the request that when the new athletic director comes, hopefully he'll be available for our next meeting, and for him to bring that report. Normally we have him a little closer to the end of the year, but in essence, we're going to ask him to come and give that presentation to us in February in order to hopefully help us have the information to make an informed vote on paying these positions this year and, excuse me, moving forward. Mr. Silva, Dr. Silva, do you still have a question? Yes?
I just have a general comment. I firmly believe that there should be additional funding for sports assistant coaches because having the assistants volunteer just doesn't seem right. It's difficult to get the assistants, and they're needed, especially at the high school, actually for any level. When you have that many kids on the field, having an assistant coach on the sideline helping out with the program as well as with the games is important, especially at the high school level.
Cool. So we can have that conversation hopefully next month.
Yes. The next item I have is that the policy, we're going to be reviewing the building rental policy and working on the rental rates, hopefully for next month in February. And then I briefly can say that the revenues are coming in pretty much as we anticipated. There's no shortfalls that I am seeing based on what we anticipated for our revenues.
All right, so the revenues are on the screen for a quick look if anybody wants to look quickly before we move to the expenses, because I do believe, Ms. Sherburne, I saw on your agenda that you have 3 that concern you.
Yes, I did put on my report, my next, back to my expenditure report. So first of all, I just want to say that I was out of the office for 2 weeks, so I was not able to take care of some of the negatives that we do have in the accounts right now, and those will be rectified by our next meeting. However, there's 3 areas that I'm really keeping my watchful eye on. The first one is the snow removal account. That would be BG 780.
Give me a page number there, Queen.
And that page would be, shouldn't be too far down. On page 7, there's a snow removal, BG 780 62590. If you look at it, we have, can see that we've expended $56,372.50. I did get another invoice in. What this report, it's kind of hard to tell for you to see that we have that it's expended 56,000, but we also have encumbered the remainder. So the report is actually showing 100% if the encumbrance is actually expended. But where I'm seeing right now is that we're already at 56% expended, and we really haven't had any real major snowstorms. But the little 8-inch snowstorm, I came from Havel where we got 18, so that one really like almost ate up our budget. So the snow removal is an area I'm looking for. If we do go over on that, that is one area that we can go to city council to ask for more funding for. However, we can't go to them for more funding if we have a savings somewhere else in our budget. But we'd be looking at that. The salting of streets, it becomes very costly. So that's one area I'm looking. Under the special education, that would be SP 860 cost center, and that would be between page 37 and 38. And again, you will see that we not only have expended Under the collaborative, 548,000, we have encumbered 907. So back to my previous conversation where we have our meeting every month, everything that we know of as of today has been encumbered. Now, if she does have a student that leaves a program, we go in and unencumber the funds, so we have it available. But this is showing you as of January that we have, our funds for, in our budget have been spoken for. So this is an area. Now, anything that comes up, if she has a placement that comes in tomorrow, we're going to have to use our circuit breaker funding because we do not have any funding here. So that's an area that I'm watching. And then the last one that I'm watching, which, you know, people that have been on the committee for many years hear me like I'm a broken record, but it is the substitute line, which would be OT 275, and that would be around page 33. And OT 275. So we have two accounts in there. 61000 would be just our regular substitutes for daily absences. And then 61872, it says substitute, but that would be long-term substitutes. So as you can see that we have spent, this tells us that we have 57% available, so we've spent about 43. And then, but the long-term substitutes is saying that we have 83%
So we spent.
spent.
Yeah.
Percent used, I'm sorry, used. So I did, when I looked at this earlier, it was 62, so each week, the long-term substitutes and the substitutes, that gets paid bi-weekly or weekly, depending upon if we've hired somebody at a bachelor's step 1 or if we've hired somebody for 110. So, but that's an area, that's another area that we're watching. What the first thing I'll do is start looking at people that are taking time off without pay. So if we do have somebody that takes a maternity leave and say they take 4 weeks that 8 weeks that they can use their time, and then 4 additional weeks that they don't, then there will be some savings in salary accounts. So that's what I'll be looking at next to see if there's any excess. If there is, I'll put it right there because that's what we'll be using it for. Other than that, everything is pretty much status quo. The buildings and grounds is, accounts, which is the BG, any BG account at the beginning. So pages 6 through 8. Those accounts are very tight this year. If you recall, when we built our budget, we said some of the funding was going to come out of the building rental revolving. So I'm constantly making changes. Dr. Silver, if I'm going to make a transfer from a BG account to a BG account, I don't need to bring it to you. If I'm going to make something from the BG to the OT, it has to come to you. And that's what we voted earlier.
Okay, Dr. Silva, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just have a question about
Mike?
the snow removal.
Mike?
You might.
Sorry. So with regard to how much was spent for the snow removal, looking at the past history, is it more than what you would have expected, given the?
I'm going to say yes, I was kind of surprised, but I do look at it, and the city did not go up. I thought they actually had gone up in their rates for the snowplow, but I did find that it was the same as last year.
So do you,
But what I don't ever know is how many times do we have to salt? Like if we have a storm, I actually called Mr. Collins today and was like, okay, he's the one that knows how long these storms have been. So one of the bills that I got was like $46,000, and I was like, whoa, like that's what really kicked us. But it was salting all day long. If we have a long continuous storm, it's going to cost us an awful lot of money. And it was funny because one of my staff members says, well, can't they just have one truck that goes to every school, not just have 3 trucks out there? And I'm like, well, how do you decide which school? Because you can't. I mean, that's the thing, and that's what happens. And when they contract with the city does put the contract out. There is a 4-hour minimum, so if there's a storm that's only 2 hours, we are hit a little harder on something like that. But it's also, as Mr. Collins said to me, thank goodness that we have Iron Tree that says that they'll do this, because he doesn't know how we'd be able to do it. The city can't do all of ours. And so, as you know, that's part of our budget. Now, if we have a storm that comes that's a FEMA storm, Mr. Collins will take my bills and pay them out of his account, because when the FEMA money comes in, it just goes there. But that's kind of rare that we have that.
Okay, don't be jinxing us. We need to knock on a lot of wood right now.
That's right.
So of FEMA, like if this is the Sunday night storms we had however many years ago that every Monday we had to cancel school, right? If it crosses some threshold, then Mike Collins can apply to the state for relief. But knock wood, the couple snow events that we've had so far here don't qualify for that.
Right.
All right, so we are 4 minutes over our allotted time. Again, I apologize, we got started a couple minutes late, so everybody was waiting for the real meeting to start. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion?
Thank you, Dr. Silva.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. All those in favor? Non-debatable, 3-0. We are finished at 7:34, and our next meeting can begin soon.
The real meaning.
Okay, I'm ready.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being present this evening. This is the Beverly School Committee. We are in a committee of the whole meeting this evening. It is Wednesday, January 24th, 2024. We are using a hybrid remote meeting platform, although all of the members are present this evening that we're expecting. So this platform is also being broadcast and streamed by our friends at BevCam. Thank you, BevCam. We appreciate that. And we are permitted to use remote meeting platforms based on the acts of former governor and our present governor and legislator. And this basically has been extended until March 31st, 2025. So once those acts expire, a quorum and a chair will physically need to be present to have remote participants based on the permission that Beverly has already obtained from the Attorney General. So tonight being a committee of the whole, we do not have an agenda item for members of the public to address the body. However, we will have an opportunity for that at our next regular meeting. We do ask that residents submit their requests to join us on the remote meeting platform, or submit their thoughts in advance, or join us here at our meeting. Emails may be sent to residentvoice@beverlyschools.org, or again, you may appear in person. Joining us tonight are members of the school committee, various members of the district administration and leadership teams, and I will conduct a full roll call / attendance in just a moment, because sometimes the meeting platform does not show us everyone who is participating remotely. I'll also use that opportunity to confirm that our remote participants can both hear and see us here in the Beverly Middle School. I do want to remind any participants online that any audio or video that you supply will become part of the meeting record, so do please use your mute functionality to prevent background noises. Why don't I conduct our roll call attendance right now? We have Mayor Cahill.
Here.
Ms. Kimberly Coelho.
Here.
Dr. Kenan Mackenzie DeFrancis absent this evening. Present in person, Karen Robinson.
Here.
And Jeffrey Silva.
Here.
Lorinda Visnick.
Here.
And I'm Rachel Abel. We are also joined in person this evening, Dr. Sue Trocek,
Here.
Ms. Jean Sherburne,
Here.
Ms. Bethany Splansky. Here. Online, we have Assistant Superintendent Dorothy Flaherty.
Here.
Thank you. We also have a number of educators who are joining us this evening. Thank you so much for joining us in person. We also have a couple online. I'm seeing Ms. Paguyo and Mr. Kruniak. And I believe our City Council President, Ms. Flowers, is still with us from the F&F meeting. So thank you.
I am. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here with us this evening. With that, our agenda this evening is rather short, but might take us some time. Looks can be deceiving sometimes on our agendas. I would say that we have a number of items that we're discussing in open session, and then at the end of our agenda, we will be moving to go into executive session and not to return to open session. First item, an easy one usually, is the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'm not sure whose turn it is. Dr. Churchak, you look eager. Please lead us. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much for that. I'm not an educator, but sometimes when people make eye contact, you're like, you're getting called on. Okay. Our next item is actually the approval of our meeting records from our retreat. And this was the retreat we had on November 1st at McEwen School. It was included in Ms. Bergeron's second email. Do I have
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Visnick.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Coelho. Were there any corrections or additions that people wanted to bring to the table? I'm not seeing any. All those in favor? 6-0. Thank you so much. And now, Dr. Churchak.
If you would let me in for that virtual.
Oh, I see. 2 people are waiting. Oh, look, we're joining Dr. Morgan and Dr. Chirocek. We will add them to our roll.
All right, and so I'm just going to use the opportunity to share my screen. How did I do that wrong? Where's the Zoom? Share screen, there it is. All right. So I actually only have one item on my superintendent's report this evening. It's a follow-up from the last meeting and actually the last couple of meetings. We've been having discussion on the 24-25 school calendar. And so I know in your packets, I have presented all of you with different versions. You got a lot of copies of different versions that Donna forwarded to everybody. We're looking at 3 different versions of the calendar, and we're looking at 3 different formats of the calendar. So there's sort of 2 different decisions to be made, or the discussions to be had. There are dates for so in each of the different versions, there are lots of dates to be considered, and I wanted them all out there. The different versions have various iterations of these particular days under consideration. So one conversation will be about the state primary, which is being held on September 3rd this year. As I mentioned last year, September 3rd would have been the first calendar day, the first day for students to report. It is primary day, the state primary, so I think the discussion will be between whether we have a professional development day on that day or if it's a no school day. I'm just announcing that the pre-K kindergarten start date is Friday, September 6th. The professional development day schedule is another conversation that we'll have, depending on how the committee decides to act upon different iterations of the calendar. Religious and ethnic observances, we've had a lot of conversation about that, and I shared some data with all of you last time we met around that, and so taking a look at the different opportunities that we have around that. And then finally, the decisions that we make will impact the possible graduation date, whether it's June 1st or June 8th. Just to explain to all of you, the reason that it's in question is that you cannot hold graduation more than 12 school days prior to the 180th day of school. So depending on where we place school days throughout the calendar, it impacts when graduation takes place. You know, that's not that we can't make it work either way, that's just a consideration. And then just a reminder that by policy, our 24-25 calendar, I'm actually submitting it to you tonight. There is an asterisk, the committee can vote tonight, but we really should vote by February 13th. That would be the final opportunity for consideration. Again, this is the data on the family feedback on religious and ethnic observances. I had sent out a survey over the past month to both staff and families about the district improvement plan, and I included in the family survey a question about religious and ethnic observances. I could not include it in the staff because we can't engage in conversations about working conditions when we're in active negotiations, so that I just did this with the family. And the response came back. We had over 160 families respond, and of those responses, 28% preferred to not have school on a religious or ethnic observance day, but the other 72% did either preferred to be in school on that day or had no preference whether they were in school on that day. So this was something that we had talked about in the December meeting. There was some question from the committee. You wanted to kind of get sort of a gauge as to what the community would be thinking about it. And so this is some information that I wanted to share with you. Anybody have any questions on this?
Madam President?
Yes, Mayor
Thanks.
Kane.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Doctor, I'm just confused by all the dots.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's because of I am too. No, the blue slice of pie are those who prefer schools to be closed on religious and ethnic observances. The orange is those that prefer it to be open, and the red had no preference whether it was open or not. And the extra dots, I'm not sure why they came in there. I'll have to check with Megan Sudak because she made my data, but. So,
Okay.
I
It's the
believe
extra
she
dot. It's
coded
the
it-
extra
I
dots
believe
that
she
are
coded it,
confusing.
one way, and then when I'm not sure. It has no significance. There's no significance to the dots.
And Ms. Robinson?
So that was 160 responses, and how many did you send out?
Well, there are 4,700 students in Beverly, so
Yeah,
those are the responses.
that's what I wanted to
Yep.
point out.
I did send them to all families, so received a copy. All right. Okay. So version 1 you have 3 formats on version 1, but version 1 is one that I'm recommending. Although I will say I had a good conversation with Julia Brotherton and Scott in our mutual concerns, and there's a option that that gave me pause, and I think I would love to share with all of you too as we get going on the conversation. But the version that I am recommending has us attending a professional development days, the 2 in August, which would be similar to as we've done in the past, and utilizing September 3rd as a professional development day. And then November 5th is a very large election day this year, so that will also be a professional development day. And those would be the 4 professional development days that we would have for contractually that we have in our with teachers. Originally, I had said to have December 13th be an early release day. That's a Friday, and we would work with the principals and schedule. Historically, that has been conferences where we've held elementary and middle school, middle school most recently, conference days. This year, the elementary schools had an early release day on Friday and had 4 or 5 hours otherwise built into their schedule out of contractual after-school hours. It was done sort of late because if you remember, we discovered late that we couldn't hold that day. We think that in talking with the principals, they felt like they could certainly set a schedule up in plenty of time for everybody to know and understand when those conferences would be. I'll come back to that in a minute. April 18th is Good Friday. I'm recommending that it be an early release day, thinking about the staffing and how we would be able to staff the buildings. I think that's my recommendation. I'm not opposed to other options or ideas that people might have if it were a full day. I would raise concerns with all of you that if it were a full day, I may have more difficulties with staff. I think I'd be more inclined to people that want to observe Good Friday. The observance really begins at noon on Friday. And then finally, graduation day would be June 1st in this calendar, with the last 180th day of school being on June 17th, and that would make June 25th the last day with 5 weather-related cancellation days. And so that was my original recommendation. I was showing this slide that there are other notable dates to know about. September 6th will be the first day for preschool and kindergarten. If you remember, if you look at the calendar, on the remainder of the grades 1 through 9 would report on September 4th, with grades 10, 11, and 12 being a virtual day, and kindergarten and preschool would begin on the 6th. The 4th and the 5th in September would be utilized as screening and orientation days for preschool and kindergarten. These other days were listed as early release days that we had agreed upon in the past typically used for building-based staff development or district-wide staff development for elementary and middle school. One of the iterations, or one of the things that was brought to the table on Tuesday when we were talking with the union, and I worked with the union. I wanted to know, because there's kind of a divide as to the staff. Some staff liked the setup of the conferences, and they were fine with the way that it was set up this year. Others, and it kind of went by buildings, so some buildings, we kind of had a 50-50 split, and at the middle school, we had a grade level split, so some grade levels liked it and some grade levels didn't. And as we talked through it, we mentioned that other districts sometimes do 2 early release days in a row. And so one of the suggestions were we could not add another early release day, but move the January 22nd early release day to December 12th. And that would mean we would have early release on the 12th, early release on the 13th, and that would allow the majority of the hours for the conferences to be on those 2 days. It would also allow some flexibility. We had talked about, there has been some people that were wondering if we could have an evening opportunity at some of them, whether like a 5 to 7, and that would be the additional 2 hours, but that would be worked out with the principals. So I had already submitted these to all of you, but I always am open to more feedback, and that was some of the feedback. And so that's another option and possibility.
Thanks. I saw Mayor Cahill's hand.
Thanks, Madam President. Dr. Trochik, in a typical year, so a couple of questions. In a typical year, how many early release days are there? And are they all as a result of prior contractual agreements? And how much total during the course of the year out of school time is also in the contract for various purposes?
So there isn't anything in the contract about conferences. There was a memorandum of agreement with the union prior to last year that we would have so that's part, but it's not in the actual contract, but we did have a memorandum that we had worked out with them around the early release days for the elementary being a full day on Friday and a half a day on Thursday. So when we retooled it, because we had the difference, the voting day, the announcement of the primary day came later, we had to work it back in, and we made sure that we utilized the same number of hours. We gave them the same number of hours to do the conferences. These early release days typically that we have throughout the year are these 5. And they are utilized, they're the 5 that are up here. So that's what we've had for the last, I would say, maybe 3 years. I think we added a couple 3 years ago. In those conference time, immediately the year we returned from the pandemic, we had added 2 more. We used to only have 3, and now we have 5. And those 5 are used for professional development, and some of them had been used for conferences before that. So that's 10 hours of release, because it's 12 to 2.
Okay, so that's PD and conferences connected to early release.
Correct.
What is in the contract for outside of school hours?
28.
28 total?
Right now, 28 total outside of school hours, and whenever we were scheduling the conferences, we were utilizing those hours, so it would, yeah.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
Looking at early release days, looking at like Wednesdays and Fridays, is there a preference is there a reason why they're distributed?
Yep, so they're most of them are on a Wednesday. If it's on a Friday, it's because it's a holiday, or, for some, like Thanksgiving, well, that one's a Wednesday too, but they're typically on Wednesdays, and the reason for that is those are meeting days, staff meeting days, so those are at the beginning of the year, we want to have the consistent day where staff knows that there may be staff meetings, right? And so currently they're Wednesday. So if we have an early release day on a Wednesday and a staff meeting, we can utilize from noon to 3 or from noon to, depending on the building that you're in.
Okay.
On our early release days, do we typically serve lunch, or is it a no lunch served?
Yep, so the only one, we do not serve lunch on Thanksgiving, although I would have to ask Christina whether we did or not this year, but typically we do serve lunch, or we have lunch distributed, and it goes home with kids. But we incorporate lunch in these early release days.
Thank you. Did I see another hand at the table? I have another question, perhaps. I know that one of the topics of discussion is to look at our policy a little bit later in the agenda about this. I'm looking for the title.
IMDC.
Accommodations for religious and ethnic observances. And I know that one of the concerns that we've heard from parents and caregivers, and even some educators have reached out to school committee members, is about the disruptive nature when we have a lot of religious holidays that also coincide with primary voting days and federal holidays and things like that. And so one of the things that I know we've been discussing is trying to make our calendar a little less disruptive, and also recognizing that we can't recognize all religious holidays. And so that survey, even though it was a small sample size, I'm sure the people that had opinions made those known, and they took the time to fill out the survey. I guess that's all to say. I'm wondering about the early release that you have on this sample schedule for next calendar year for April 18th. And if it might make sense to call that a half day from a programmatic rationale, like we have half days in each month. It seems like we have one for team meetings and for parent-teacher conferences, and for that educationally based purpose, and I wonder if that might make sense here. It's also before the Patriots' Day holiday and a vacation week, and I guess I would be concerned to continue to call that a Good Friday half-day holiday.
Yeah.
And I'm also thinking about some of our AFSCME contracts where we would have to do a swap anyway and potentially have to,
But we did put those
that.
in, so that we made that correction in the AFSMEs, in the
well, we'll have
AFSME
to
units.
give them notice if we swap
Yes, we have to give
one.
them
We have to
notice,
give
but
them
we wrote in
but-
there that we would be,
Yep.
yeah, that we think
So
we'd do that.
I'm just wondering.
Yes, I agree. Again, the early release day is for students. It's still a full day for teachers. It's just that in terms of staffing when students are in the building, that was the concern. But it would still be a full day for teachers, and programmatically, we would use it as a professional development day.
And so I'm looking at version 1
Yep.
in this format that I really liked. I put that format
Yeah.
on top for myself.
Yes, I like that one as well.
And we see a little label here, but I think that's just
could fix that, yeah.
our notes to ourselves to recognize that is that holiday in this particular calendar year, but in the future calendar years, we might consider that our April.
But it would, right,
half-
and it would just be called early release, and it would, but it wouldn't always be the Friday before vacation.
It wouldn't always fall then.
Because not the Wednesday days don't always typically, necessarily fall. So I guess I agree, and I think it's marked as an early release here, and we would just take away any of the
Go away
other,
the note.
yeah, notations. Yep.
Showing my hand a bit, but Ms. Visnick.
So I kind of want to pile on what you said. I do appreciate the fact that this September, this version of the calendar, September, once we start going to school, we go to school, and there are no days off, right? And I have often voted against the calendars that get brought forward because September on previous calendars was so incredibly choppy or disruptive. It's hard for the teachers to get the children into a routine, and it was hard for parents to say, oh, well, I just got my kid back in school. I've taken all my summer camps, and now it's time to go back to school. Oh, I need to take a day off. Oh, next week I need to take another day off. So I really appreciate the cleanness, I guess I'll say, of September. However, I am having a very difficult time with the April early release date and our goals. And as President Abel alluded to, we are going to see a policy IMDC later in the meeting. And our goals of removing other religious holidays, it feels not good to still see that on all three versions of the calendar that are brought forward this evening, that all three either have no school on that day or an early release day. It is my understanding that our goal in some of the policy work that we've been doing and in some of the other changes on the calendar is to truly recognize that we want to be more culturally aware, and we cannot recognize every holiday, and therefore we shouldn't be recognizing any holidays. And if people want to take a holiday, they want to have an observance, they are more than welcome to do so, and we will in no way, shape, or form hold that against anyone academically or extracurricular-wise. And again, that policy that's coming forward. I can't guarantee how any of you are going to vote, and tonight's just the first reading of it. But we are bringing forward a policy that says, very explicitly says that. So I guess I want to lodge just a very big comment about April 18th, and I am, based on previous conversations, a little surprised that we don't have a version of a calendar that has us going to school a full day on April 18th.
So, thank you, and I agree with you. I think I did not feel it was value to make 8 versions to show every iterant, so I felt like that you can make that decision, and I think I said that in the beginning. It can be a full day or it can be a half day. That's fine. That won't disrupt the length of the. It won't disrupt when the last day of school is or the 180th day. So I don't know whether we would have a staffing problem if we did that or not. So again, I hear you on that piece. I think either way would work for me. So I'm not saying one way or the other is right or wrong. I'm just saying that would be something that I wonder about. However, again, rip the Band-Aid off and maybe we wouldn't have a problem and that would be fine, so.
So I'm going to go with Ms. Bisnick, then Dr. Silva, and then Ms. Robinson.
But didn't you just say to Ms. Abel, President Abel, that the staff would be expected to be there a full day
They would.
anyway?
But if they took a religious observance and they left it, if they took a half a day for the religious observance, I wouldn't have a supervision problem because students would be out of the building.
Got it. Thank you.
It's about the supervision of students more than anything else.
Thank you for that clarity. Dr. Silva.
I'm just curious if that could be considered an early release day instead.
I think that's what Ms. Abel was saying, yeah.
Yeah.
You're
Right.
concurring with that.
Okay. Ms. Robinson.
So having, if we took the entire day off that day, that would make the calendar, the graduation would have to be on June 8th. Okay. All right. Just wanted to be sure of that. Thank you.
Because either way, if we call it a conference day, which it would be a professional development day, then we would be no school on the 3rd. Either way, we would lose that day, and 180 would move over a day and flip all of the other pieces.
Mayor Cahill. Oh, sorry. Ms. Coelho.
Yeah.
Mike.
Mine has nothing to do with the holiday. Having a kid who disrupts the class when he gets disrupted in his routine. I did notice that the third week of October, the kids have Monday the 14th off for Columbus Day. Then they go to school Tuesday, and then they have a half a day that Wednesday, which would disrupt their short 4-day week to begin with. Would it be possible to move that up a week or back a week
It would
so
be
it's less
definitely, yeah.
disruptive
Yep.
for that short week for
Yep,
them?
it would be.
And some of those
Yep.
kids that have issues with
Yep.
getting back into a routine?
When Ms. Visnick was talking about how wonderful the September holiday looked, I looked down that and I actually noticed the same thing. It would not matter whether we had that on the 9th or the 23rd, but we would like to have a day. So this is about the 6th week of school. The buildings use this professional development day for data meetings, for other things in the building. And so it's important to have, we think that's a good place for an early release day, but it does not have to necessarily be in that specific week. It could be moved to one week or the other.
We'll go to Mayor Cahill, and then I have a question as well. You're good? Okay. As a selfish parent planning activities for children, I do wonder about the 11th. It probably would not be a great half day for teachers who are also parents for the long weekend, but are these half days like the 16th on a Wednesday because that's when the common planning time?
Correct. And we can extend it into another hour because you can have a staff meeting attached to that.
To the common planning
So it
time.
makes that a 3-hour
Okay,
block instead
so
of a 2.
so the
Yes,
9th
that's
or
why
the
we do
23rd
Wednesdays. Yeah.
would be, okay. Oh, well, can't sneak in a long weekend. Mrs. Visnick.
I wish to ask about the wording. I believe that in the past, we labeled our calendar Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day. I'm wondering why our wording has gone back to quote unquote I believe that.
It says
No, it
just
says
I left
Indigenous
my
peoples.
glasses in the car, so
It
I
says
could
just
be wrong. I
Indigenous
apologize.
peoples. Well, this version, I'm going to probably say that Donna was just working off of copies, and you would just let us know exactly how you want that to read, and we'd make it read that way. I don't think it was
Okay, thank you.
intentional.
Okay. So I think Dr. Trocheck has presented
Yep.
version
One.
1 as being the preferred option.
Yeah.
Did you want to speak to versions 2 or 3? Or
I can run you through what they look like, just so that you get a chance to see them, and then we can go back and make final decisions
Tweaks to
about what
this,
you
okay.
like on this one. So, version 2 is not much different than the last one we looked at, with the exception of It had, well, actually, it's very different. And it has September 3rd as a no-school day, which means we would have a professional development day on the 28th and the 29th, and we would come back to school on the 4th, same first day of school, but we would not have school we'd have no school for teachers or students on the 3rd. And we would move that professional development day to December 13th, and that is the older model of a half a day on the 12th and a full conference day on the 13th. The rest of it, that automatically doesn't give us an option for graduation being the 1st or the 8th. It just is on the 8th, and making the last day of school June 18th with 180 days, June 26th with weather-related. And then version 3, again, we have no school on September 3rd. We have the releases. That shows just a no school day on the 18th, and then graduation day on the 8th. That pushes it back 2 days with the last day of school with weather-related days being the 27th.
Ms. Visnick?
Will you please remind all the people watching from home, as well as those in this room, what is the rule about whatever day we pick for graduation day? What happens if, in fact, we have snow days?
Nothing. The 180th day, you declare it in your calendar, that doesn't change. Even
And-
if it goes, so it's 12 days from the 180th day before there are weather-related cancellations.
Fantastic, thank you.
I'm not sure if the committee's ready for a motion. I think that I'm already spinning in my head with a couple of amendments to the version 1 that I'd like to put forward, but if anyone else wanted to make a motion.
Do we need a motion for version 1 to then begin amending? We need a motion to begin the,
Well, I think I could make a motion with some amendments. I guess I'm wondering, I know there are a lot of parents right now that summer camp registrations have opened. They want to know what the first day of school is going to be. They want to kind of have a sense for, what plans they can make for their families. And I'm, I guess, comfortable enough with what we have been presented with and some of the ideas that, feedback has elicited from our BTA with Sue's meetings that we might be able to vote on something tonight. But I don't want to rush it if there's someone else that has a different idea.
I'm comfortable.
Mayor Cahill.
Madam President, I'd love to hear your motion.
Okay. See if I can follow my notes. So I would like to make a motion that the school committee approve version 1, amending the early release day of October 16th. And shall we pick the 9th or the 23rd?
I was wondering if Dr. Flaherty would want to weigh in. Does
Dr.
it matter,
Flaherty.
Dr. Flaherty, whether that day
October
for-
9th or 23rd?
I think it's actually a benefit to not break up the short week more. So I think going the later date is good.
23rd?
23rd? Okay. Okay, so version 1, moving the early release day for elementary and middle school to October 23rd. I also understand the value for parent-teacher conferences, and heard the suggestion of moving the January 22nd date to December 12th. So the 12th and the 13th would be half-days. But that's the one that I'm most on the fence about. Mayor Cahill.
Could I ask the superintendent to go back to version 1 since that's what you're making a
that's what
motion
we're-
on?
Oh, you mean up there, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Again, there is a holiday, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, on that Monday, and
That-
to Ms. Coelho's point, it would
Yes.
be a disruptive week for the
That was
students
part of
to
the
have a
conversation we
holiday
had.
and the half day. And usually we get one of those snow days thrown in there in January anyway to cause a curveball. So I was thinking we would move that half day, early release day to the 12th.
Yeah.
Okay, so my proposal has October 23rd, December 12th, and 13th as our half-days. And then I'd like to remove references to Good Friday, but have an early release day that day that falls before the vacation, because attendance does matter. And I think there are a lot of families that like to travel, and flights beginning around 1 p.m. are sometimes more affordable, and we're going to lose students as well, even if they're not leaving for, religious observances or anything. So I'd just like to call that a half day, in keeping with the fact that we have early release days pretty much once per month, and we don't have one in April.
I would second that motion for discussion.
Okay. Ms. Visnick, do you have comments?
I wish to ask you in the future if the Good Friday does not fall on the Friday before a vacation, then we would have a full day. Is that your expectation?
That's my expectation.
It's just a freak that this particular school year, Good Friday falls on the day before a vacation. So we're going to take it as a half a day, as almost like a compromise.
Yes, but also I'm keeping my eye on the June 1st graduation date if we don't have at least a half day of school before the vacation.
Oh, I
Yeah.
absolutely agree
Yep.
with that,
Yep.
right? My preference would be a full day that day, but as we've talked about before around this table in this room, compromise is king, so.
Mayor Cahill.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm just trying to think through the days before vacations during the course of the year, right? So the day before Thanksgiving is a half day, as proposed. The day before winter December vacation starts is a
Full day.
full day.
Except for that, well, it depends on when Christmas falls. That one's a really tricky one because the contracts, there's a lot of reasoning why, other contracts being part of it, but the going into the winter holiday, that day moves around, but it's not a half day. It's either a no day or a full day.
And in the proposed calendar for this coming school year, it is a full day.
Correct. In this one, it is a full day.
And in the proposed calendar for this coming school year, the day before February vacation is a full day?
Correct.
I would like to propose a further amendment that April 18th, 2025 be a full day of school.
Is there a second for the amendment?
I would second that amendment
Okay.
to your amendment.
Is there more discussion on the amendment, or shall we vote on the amendment? Okay, there's an amendment on the table to make April 18th in this calendar version 1 a full day of school. All those in favor? 5. Those opposed? 1. 5 to 1. So the amended motion is to have a full day on April 18th, with the early release days for October showing on the 23rd, and for December, the 12th and the 13th, and not on January 22nd. Okay. Is there any further discussion? So we have a motion on the table to approve version 1 with the changes for October early release being the 23rd, December for being the 12th and 13th, and not on January 2nd, and with April 18th being a full day. Dr. Silva.
Can I just have you clarify the change that you're suggesting for January 22nd?
It will
Moving
just
that,
be a full day.
yeah, it will be a full day, not an early release day. We'll move it to the 12th of December, yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Motion on the table. Any more discussion? All those in favor of version 1 with those changes and the amendment? 6-0. We have a calendar.
And then in terms of format, I'm curious just to hear. Donna worked on 3 different formats for you so that you could see what it would look like. And I guess I would wonder so this is the original format. So this is the one that we have that basically goes on the calendar. It's just a narrative, straight line narrative. This was a first attempt at kind of trying to put it onto a calendar with the dates down here. And then this And we'll have to thank our friends over at Hamilton Wenham because they shared the template with us. This was Hamilton Wenham's, and we reached out for them, and they were able to share the template. This shows the calendar in columns. It has a code rather than colored boxes to tell you. So when you look, it says either H or PD or ER, and then it has the descriptions down the middle.
Dr. Silva.
Sorry, I'm going to ask you to, or ask to consider an amendment to what the December, just to ask if it would be less disruptive to have the half days be the 13th and the 20th versus the 12th and the 13th, with the 20th being the Friday before the vacation.
So I'm not sure that would be a
Yeah, we've
a
already.
good day for conferences. I wouldn't make that as a recommendation
Okay,
for
then that's fine.
conferences, because I just think it would be
That's
hard to
fine.
get parents. It would be hard to get, I think it's just a tough time for conferences.
That's fine.
Sure. Okay. Ms. Visick.
I just want to jump up and down about the third version with the 3 columns and the thing in the middle. From a very nerdy point of view, right, there's a lot of data around how do we actually learn in our eye movements, and when you have to take your eyes from the top of a calendar down to the bottom to read the key and then back up, that is less than optimal.
Okay.
And so with it in the middle, from a true nerd evidence point of view, I very highly recommend this version. I think that's my preference, but it actually comes with scientific data behind it. It's nerdy, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think I already stated my preference also for this version, obviously with some of the labeling corrections or changes that we've just mentioned. It would probably be too much to ask to put Panther Pride Days on for the high school or the semester breaks, but.
Do that on their own calendar.
Yeah.
Maybe they could do
I
a
was
version for
thinking
high
that
schoolers.
this convention is pretty much semester 1 and semester 2, just the way that it breaks, but I think that this is very helpful to have the key right in the center, to have the differentiation for the early release, all levels versus middle school and elementary school. I think that throws off some people. But yeah, the high school also maybe could adopt a similar format
Well, we will share it with them.
and have an overlay or something, because this is,
Awesome.
yeah, just
All right.
really good. Did anyone else have a strong preference for the way that we used to do it or the middle?
I agree.
Okay, I think we have consensus. Mayor Cahill.
I like them all and I dislike them all. No, I mean,
Something wrong
honestly,
with everything.
everybody's.
It's like a snow day.
Yeah, right. Everybody learns differently. Everybody kind of navigates stuff differently. I can get behind that. You're talking about.
Version, yeah, that one right there.
I mean, yes, I can get behind that. I just wonder if the other versions might be available in the alternative somewhere for people who, even if it's just on the website as a second or third click, if somebody digests their information.
I'm sure there's a way to do that, but we'll put this as the primary.
Yeah, yeah.
This would be the primary, though.
Okay.
All right, awesome.
Thanks.
That's all and you're all set with
Thank
that,
you,
so,
and
yeah.
thank Ms. Bergeron for all of the extra attention
I'm going
and
to tell you, she
effort.
was phenomenal. She worked so hard on this. And this was a lot of work. I also appreciate the conversation, because I think a year ago, somebody said, well, why do we do it? And it was sort of like, well, let's have this discussion and conversation. And it's a big thing to take on as a committee. So I appreciate all of you and all of your time and thoughts for it. So, and again, also my work with Julia and the conversations around that too. So.
Do you need to know what they want to call October 14th?
Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples
it's
Day
a
was what
state-
we had from before.
it's a
That was
state
what you
holiday
prefer to
as
have
well.
it continue to be called.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a state holiday. Okay. One agenda item, but it took some time. Thank you so much. Next, for the chair, we have some policies that were in our packet. 3 of these are actually our second reading this evening. That would be DK, which is our payment procedures, DJ, which is our purchasing, and DJE, which are procurement requirements. I think we're familiar with these. We've seen them a few times. I think in this version, it's been simplified just to show us the changes, although I did have a question on DJE about the amounts exceeding number.
Ms. Sherburne tells us in F and F that went up from 50,000 to 100,000.
To 100, okay. I just wanted to make sure that was 100, okay.
Yeah, it looks really bad in the track changes version. I could have stricken the whole number. Maybe in the future I will try to
Okay.
strike the whole number and then write a whole new number.
Okay.
Because, yeah, I agree, it looks bad on the piece of paper. I apologize.
Okay. And then just for other members, these three were at F and F. They were discussed quite a bit. Ms. Visnick had presented these to us in the first reading, and this packet is just the final version that we would be adopting. We do need a formal 2/3 vote. I don't think it has to be by roll call, but it has to be 2/3 of those members who are present. So tonight, that's 4.
Would you like to do them as a packet or individually?
We've listed them individually, if we don't mind. Oh,
I would like to make a motion that the committee adopt policy letter DK payment procedures as it is presented in your packet with the track changes.
I will second that motion. Is there any conversation or questions? All those in favor? 6-0.
Madam Chair, I would like to make the motion that the committee accept policy DJ purchasing as presented in their packets with the track changes.
Yes, effective as of this evening.
As of this evening, sure.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Robinson. Any questions or concerns? All those in favor? Okay.
And Madam President, I would like to make the motion that the committee accept policy DJE procurement requirements as presented in the packet with the track changes effective this evening.
Second.
Thank you. Dr. Silva. Any questions or concerns? Mayor Cahill.
Madam President, in looking at what we had to work with in advance of the meeting, are you saying that earlier the track changes shown here were accepted or were further amended? Mrs. Visby.
Yeah.
May I answer? Yeah. So in F and F, what you're seeing as track changes is what was approved out of F and F. Yeah.
Yeah.
With administration approval, right? We have often Dr. Trocheck there as well, but we for sure have Jean, the queen of the beans. And so, yes, that came out of F and F.
You rhymed twice there. May I ask a question?
Sure.
As I'm reading the second of the track changes, the one near the end, I'm having a hard time understanding it. I'll just read it aloud. A procurement for a supply or service in the amount of 10,000 or greater by not more than 100,000. I think that means to say, but not more than 100,000.
I'm going. Hold, please. DJE.
But instead of by. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I have another one I want to ask about in reading the same sentence.
Can you read your correction again?
A procurement for a supply or service in the amount of $10,000 or greater, but not more than 100,000.
Okay.
And then the other question I have is that after that it reads, shall be awarded to the responsible party offering the needed quantity or supply among 3 written quotations sought and retained by the procurement officer. So in some processes, you have to go with qualified low bidder. I think what is being stated here is a desire to be able to be more discerning than that?
Right, we discussed that in our subcommittee meeting, and I believe Ms. Sherburne pointed out to us that sometimes people could lowball a bid, but we know they're not responsible. They're not going to be able to deliver, right? We don't want to award a contract to them because they were the low bid when we know, in fact, they could not deliver at that price point.
They still could be a qualified low bid, but that's not good enough in the sense of having a comfort level they could actually deliver. I mean, we run into this on the city side in procurement, and sometimes, so some of our RFPs state specifically, right, that there are other criteria beyond low bid that'll be evaluated. So I guess the term that you're leaning on here is responsible party.
Yes.
And I'm just trying to figure out if that's enough. I guess I'm
Yeah, so
asking
it's-
like, what's the genesis of the language? Who has kind of signed
MASC.
off on it in that?
The new text is provided by MASC.
Okay.
Change text, you would see a strike, right? A strikeout, like the 50,000 to 100,000, although that, well, Jean brought that number up, right? She pointed out that it's a new higher value, right? So
Right,
that's
yes,
kind of the,
100,000.
when you look at a policy that has edits, new text is almost always going to be, the red text is almost always going to be new text provided by MASC. If it's not from MASC, if it's from somewhere else, I try to put a note, I, wearing my policy hat, as Ms. Abel and I continue to work through creating a policy primer for how do we really want to handle policy changes moving forward, I try to like put a note, this was introduced by whomever, because the default is the bulk of the changes will come to us from MASC.
Okay. I guess I'm struggling with the language because as I read it, you could have 3 responsible parties. And it almost seems like that's the determination of who gets the award is the term responsible party.
Right, so in MCPPO, it's responsible and responsive. So in other words, they have to be able to provide you with the best price and the quantity. I can check and see if we're MASC, if that's coming out of 3039M's language.
I guess I'd like to request we hold this. It doesn't.
And I looked
There-
back in
there-
the prior versions, and I think the typo was there also on the word by, and I think you're right. So maybe we should look at our source.
All right, do you wish for me to withdraw?
Do you have
Yes,
a
please.
recommendation for the rewording?
No, I'd like to have,
We'll get some other.
I'd like to have people who are involved in procurement and people who have a law degree. I'd kind of like to have people look at it that aren't us, because it feels like we don't have the
withdraw.
right language.
Withdraw,
I could be wrong, but the responsible party is pretty definitive, and the responsive and responsible equally definitive. But how do you make that assessment if all 3 respondents, if all 3 bids fit that description?
All right, so I will withdraw my motion. I wonder what is the next action on this, though? Like, Mayor Cahill, are you suggesting that it go to Ms. Stephanie? I don't know her
Williams.
last name.
Delano?
Yeah, Dr. Chotrick and Ms. Sherburne, would you mind if we went and spoke with Mr. Gelano and Ms. Williams about that? Or would you want to take it on the school side, the other resources that you folks can reach out to? Happy to do either.
I would say go with Mr. Gelano as far as finding out what
Okay.
they, I mean, if it's coming from MASC is where we're getting the data from, we're going to assume that they
That's where we got the
have
typo from, too.
Right. Exactly, so.
It's not the only one. Ms. Robinson,
He
you'd be
may
very
have
proud of
better
me. I've been on my
language as far
editing
as-
game. Not this one, clearly.
Could I ask for a brief recess?
Because the president just took one and left me in charge? Sure. Do I need to, Okay, we're in recess. 5 minutes. Go faster.
Oh, no, I just.
We.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks for sticking with us for a brief recess. We are back in session. It is 8:39 p.m. And thank you, Ms. Bisnick, for taking over. We also had some first readings in our packet this evening. We alluded to it a few times during our calendar conversation. Everyone has the opportunity to look at the track changes versions and the new policies that are coming forward. We will be putting these on a future agenda. I'm not sure it will go on our next committee of the whole, since we have quite a bit to discuss about our curriculum and our course of studies, but we'll be looking at these again, so do bring your questions. In terms of upcoming meeting dates, I did want to just encourage everyone to look through your mailboxes at home. You probably received an invitation from our student council at the Centerville School. If you're able, tomorrow there is a blood drive at Centerville School, and a lot of great information coming out of the student council there. We will be posting a negotiations meeting next Wednesday, the 31st. I understand perhaps there may or may not be a policy meeting also.
We're going to do policy on
Thursday.
Tuesday, and it was posted today.
Okay, on the 30th, so we'll have some subcommittee work next week. And then our negotiations subcommittee will be meeting on Monday, February 5th. We also had agreed to move our CISL meeting to the 13th of February, so that should be on everyone's calendar. It's a Tuesday evening, so that we can make a combined committee of the whole in lieu of our regular meeting, and Dr. Trocheck and Dr. Flaherty will be showing us some information about our program of studies. Okay. And then we will have finance and facility again after the February break. That's the February, I have to look forward already. 28th, thank you, BevCam, 28th. Okay, just to make sure we have our full February calendar in front of us, February 28th, thank you so much. Next, the chair is going to move that we meet in executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for purposes 7 and 3, and not to return to open session. Purpose 7 is to review and approve minutes from the executive session meeting of the 10th of January, 2024, and Purpose 3 is to discuss strategy with respect to and in preparation for collective bargaining with the BTA and AFSCME units, because an open discussion may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the school committee. Do I have a second?
So moved.
Is that Ms. Bisnick? Thank you. And we do need to call a roll call vote for this action. Mayor Cahill?
Yes.
Ms. Coelho?
Yes.
Dr. Mackenzie DeFrenza is absent. Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Dr. Silva?
Yes.
Ms. Bisnick?
Yes.
And Ms. Abel? Yes. 6-0. The chair states that we are now entering into executive session, not to return to open session, 8:43 p.m. This is per Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, for purposes 7 and 3. And again, we will not be returning to open session. So thank you very much for those of you who joined us online, and thank you very much, BevCam. We'll give BevCam a moment to roll the credits. And